this episode, I speak to Patrick Ballin about high-performing teams and team resilience. One of the issues that companies face is that individuals feel that things are not settled and won't be for a very long time yet. We discuss how leaders can tell whether the team is okay when they're not co-located, and the intensity that communication across video, like Zoom or Teams, can cause. Patrick advises that all team individuals have a responsibility to lean in and recognise how others work, the need for transition time, and whether those working from home with their children present can really take another meeting during the day. The challenge organisations face is that work is getting done, the transactional, but not the relational. There is an increasing number of individuals who are working the whole time with a loss of connection to their organisation and the people within it. This is an interesting conversation about high-performing teams and how to nurture them during these uncertain times. Listen up to the rest of the conversation. Before we begin our conversation, here is a quick shout-out to the pathologically curious. Check out the Maverick Paradox magazine. It's a digital magazine written by Mavericks for business owners and professionals. You can find the magazine at themaverickparadox.com. The magazine's aim is to provoke maverick leadership everywhere. Welcome to the Maverick Paradox podcast, where we explore what it is to be a maverick and discover effective modes of leadership. I am Judith Germain, and my mission is to propel the maverick mindset into a world where character and integrity will ultimately have a higher premium than personality and bureaucracy. So thank you for joining me on this journey. If you would like to continue with me, then please subscribe to my podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or one of the other popular podcast platforms. And today our guest is Patrick Ballin. How are you doing, Patrick?
I'm very good, Judith. Very nice to speak to you.
I am so glad that you're back again, because the last podcast that we did with you, which was probably, maybe 3 years ago, was very popular, and I'm sure this one will be too.
Yeah, well, it feels like a whole load has changed since then, doesn't it?
It does. It's very, very different. So before we begin, though, if you want to familiarise the listeners with who you are, that'd be great.
Yeah, so my thing is coaching teams and leaders of teams. That's what I've been doing alongside a few other bits and pieces for the last 15 years, having had a career of doing exactly that inside organisations up till 2006. So.
Cool. And I've been following your stuff on LinkedIn, and what you do is absolutely amazing. So we're in for a real treat today.
Oh.
I think
thank you.
That surprised you, isn't it? You're shocked into silence.
Absolutely, yes. It doesn't happen often.
I think it'd be really good if we actually talk then, bearing in mind your expertise, on team resilience. Sort of what are the things that you need to inject into a team?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think it's been one of the big themes this year has been, kind of the 2020 twist on teams has been the obvious thing, which is most teams that were already operating face-to-face, and of course many teams were not anyway, they were dispersed in different locations, but those teams that had been operating face-to-face having to figure out how to operate virtually or remotely. Mm-hmm. But the other really big thing has just been this resilience thing, teams being able to stick together, feel like they are still at the same thing together, that they have each other's backs. And the sense I get, talking with clients, talking with colleagues around the world, is about the new normal a lot. I think it's less about that, and it's more about things just aren't feeling settled, and nobody feels like they're going to be really settled into any sort of long-term pattern for a while yet. And then at the other end, you've got the odd person who's going, I love this. I love that. I love the fact that things that we've been trying to do for years have accelerated in weeks and so on. But those extremes, either the people who are completely traumatized or the people who are completely loving it, I think are, as you'd expect, kind of either end of the bell curve. Most of us are in the middle. Just, this just feels disrupted and not very comfortable.
Yeah. It is a bit weird, isn't it? Because when you're co-located or you have the odd member coming in and out of the team, you can see from the body language if there are issues, from how somebody responds to something or whether they're actually, looking happy. I mean, how do you pick that up remotely? Because most people can fake feeling good for an hour's meeting.
Yeah, most of us kind of Zoom groom and put on a good act, right?
Yeah.
And the array of different backdrops that I've seen over the course of the last 6 to 9 months has been extraordinary, really. It's different, isn't it? I mean, there's a whole load of the information that we usually get, the intangible stuff that we get when we're with people in a room that we pick up on. Bits of body language, bits of tone, bits of behaviour that go, something going on with this person that requires some attention here. I think you've got less of that stuff. You've got more of some other stuff. We're all very used to the fact of seeing each other's faces in little boxes on the screen, and actually, in that sense, there's an intensity about the communication that's been going on between people in teams that is different and quite tiring, actually.
Yes.
And I've seen some interesting research around that. Most of all, I think for people who are in some sort of leadership role within teams, and my view is that's anybody who's in a team has a leadership role in a team. And that's something we might want to talk about a bit more, because I think that's going to become, if anything, more important. Is anybody who has some sort of role in sort of helping the team to get its act together has got a responsibility to lean in a bit, to intentionally make time for those more informal conversations, and to do it in a way that's sensitive to the fact that people in very different circumstances, so somebody who's in tier 3, thoroughly locked down, kids have been sent home to study, may not appreciate having yet another call put in the middle of the day. But there will be other people, and I think I've been one of these over the last 2 to 3 months, particularly, who feel like just kind of running back to back for a lot of the week. There's no transition time between one meeting and the other, and lots of people have commented on that. And it's very easy. So what happens in that situation is the stuff gets done, the work gets done, but those interactions end up becoming very transactional between team members. It's, can I talk to you about this? We need to get that done. Or they become a bit clunky and artificial. Thank God most teams have moved beyond the only response to sort of staying connected as a team being to do the weekly happy hour on a Friday afternoon with everybody on a Zoom or Teams call. Nothing wrong with them, but clearly it's by no means the whole of the answer, and for a lot of people it's probably the last thing they need, frankly. So I think being the message here is very easy to get transactional, very easy to focus on the stuff that's kind of what a coaching friend of mine, Paul Miller, was describing to me just this morning as being, kind of it's in box 1 on the time management grid. It's the stuff that's urgent and important and now, but missing either the stuff that's more relational.
Yes, that's good. Yeah.
Or more long-term focused. Because one of the other things that is interesting that comes out of that I'll give an example. I was on a coaching call with somebody. She happened to be based in a team in the US, but she could actually have been working pretty much anywhere, because since she had started in her current role, she literally had no, which had been in February of this year, she had literally had about 2 days right at the start of being physically located with her teammates. Mm. So her whole experience as somebody new to this role was, I'm only getting to know you through these virtual interactions and emails and Teams messages and WhatsApp and what some of the things that were missing. I mean, there was the obvious stuff, like it was harder to form relationships with the team and for her to feel like she really knew them and they really knew her. And that feeds into a sense of belonging. But it's more than that. And if you think about somebody in a new job, you want to find out the scoop. You want to know where the best projects are, who's doing the interesting work. Mm-hmm. You want people to know what you're capable of, because when they're thinking about somebody for the next role on, they need to know what you can do. If you've got some gaps or some interests that you want to develop, then they need to know that. And it's really hard for those. Although I think good managers always make time for those conversations in an intentional and deliberate way, and usually there's some sort of process behind that anyway. The informal stuff that feeds into that, which most teams know, most people who work in teams know, is the stuff that goes on all of the time, rather than get saved the twice yearly review. Don't get me started on that one. But those informal conversations kind of completely just had gone.
Yeah.
And for one of the outcomes of that conversation was her realizing that nobody was going to do this for her. She couldn't sit and wait for those conversations to just come up by chance, because they weren't going to come up by chance the way they usually would. Yes. She was actually going to have to make those conversations happen in a much more intentional way. Mm-hmm. And go and say, can I get a bit of time with you and find out some of the stuff you're working on? Can I talk me through some of the stuff that isn't directly about the things that are on my plate today, but are important in terms of the work of the department? Or even just some time to share. Here's some of the stuff you might not know about me,
which is actually key, isn't it?
Yeah, and you can imagine in this situation with teams going through change. Of course, a lot of teams have gone through a huge rate of change, both in how they work, but also in terms of the composition, who's in the team. That lack of knowledge of, I know you, you know me, and I really know what you can do, what your experience is, how you like to operate. That tacit knowledge that is part of the magic that makes a really great team great. It kind of dissipates, and then some of this discombobulation, some of this feeling out of sorts about how we're working together. Mm-hmm. I think comes from the fact that that kind of that material, that intangible material that knits us together is just not happening in the same way. And all of us have a job to do to make sure that changes, because otherwise we are going to have people whose entire life in an organization is going to be spent working remotely with no sense of connection, with nobody really understanding who they are and what they're about. What a loss that is, not just for the individuals. It was huge. Imagine this particular person was a recent graduate who's in his second job after graduating, and what loss of talent to the organisation, but also, what a loss of opportunity for people to do things together that would have been so much better done collaboratively than just kind of parcelled up and done by people in their home office the best they could.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because that's what worries me a lot, actually. Those that are new in role, so not necessarily a new job, but they've transitioned into a new role, or somebody who is working for the first time, whether it's someone at 18, 21, whatever it happens to be, because there is a certain thing about working collectively in an office that you pick up in your first couple of jobs. And if there's nobody to demonstrate what those things are, how are these individuals supposed to know? And then when you think that, say, somebody comes out as a graduate, they probably don't have a lot of work experience. So whereas, I had a Saturday job at 15, well, people aren't really doing that as much, are they now? Because they have to focus on getting the exams and doing all that stuff. So their work experience is probably really small.
Well, and that I think that that is certainly true for a lot of people. I guess there will be others who've managed to do a bit of bar work to keep them top up their student loan or whatever. But
that's not the same as an office or something, is it?
No, it isn't. And that experience of high quality teamwork is may not have been present in those environments. Actually, so I know I'm making a big assumption there because, as I say that, I know that there are some of those environments where actually high quality teamwork's there, in abundance.
But I mean, it's just a generic thing, isn't it? It's just I mean, if you and I walked we had to go back and work corporately, and we would know to call up everybody and find out what they're doing. We would just know this because we've worked for a long time.
Well, we would, and I think that's absolutely what I don't want to take away from is the point that I think was you were trying to make, which is that building that reference point of what high quality teamwork looks like, how to make connections, and just having those things develop in a very natural, organic way becomes much harder in this. It's one of the deficits that arises in the current environment. It's nobody's fault. It's not nobody making it happen. It's just the function of the environment in which we're working. And it requires a different response, which if you haven't learned it before, you're going to either learn, or if you never learn it, just feel like it never quite came together for me. And it's more like it didn't come together, the out of sortsness that never really felt it's not. And you and I both, I'm sure, had experience over a career that it spans years in double digits, right? Of being parts of teams where either it felt like everything really came together and you really fitted and it was brilliant, or at times working in or with teams where you felt, I don't really fit here. This is not for me. It's different from that. It's, I haven't even got enough data to really know whether I fit.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There's something about someone's talking in the office and you look up, catch somebody's eyes and you smirk and you carry back on again. There's something about someone going, I'm going to the coffee machine. Does anybody want a coffee? It's, it's those tiny little moments that builds a relationship, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. And they're really powerful, aren't they? They've become not only rituals for the team of how it gets through the day, but they start to bind people together in a very natural human way. David Rock, who runs the Neuro Leadership Institute, would say they push our social reward buttons.
Yeah, that's a good way.
And when social reward buttons are pushed, we feel like we belong. We feel like we have autonomy. We feel like we're part of something. We literally think and perform and act better because we're happy. We're not feeling threatened. And the so the deficit that we have to work on and pay attention to, be aware of, and consciously act on is if those social reward buttons aren't being pressed in the normal way, we have to make sure that we create something that does at least enough of that for people to feel like they do belong. They know where they're going. Things are as clear as it's possible for them to be in changing circumstances. That they are cared about, that they are thought about. These are not just trivial, touchy-feely things. This is at the heart of feeling like you belong in any team. Yeah, we've got a sense of purpose. We know what we're going at. We don't always agree with everything, but we fight tooth and nail to make sure that what we're here to do gets done. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And the other thing, I suppose, is how, this is a question for, if you could answer it, is how does a leader avoid everything seeming more formal? Because there's because like when you're all together, you might say, Patrick, you got a minute, and you go in and you have a nice little chat and you can deal with whatever. But when it's like, I'm phoning you now formally in your diary for X period of time, I mean, it suddenly becomes, even if it was going to be a catch-up chat, it somehow feels a bit more formal now. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? And it does feel more formal, and then you end up getting formal about informality, which is really some slightly artificial thing come up, or people book a check-in in order to ask you how you're doing. My view on this is sometimes it's about doing some quite simple things well. Mm-hmm. So taking a pause before diving into the transactional to just check, how are you doing, what's going on for you, a minute or two of personal connection. Yeah. Before getting into we've probably got on this call because we've all got 101 things to do, and this particular one thing right now is the thing we've connected to talk about. Yeah. There's also something about the leader, in the sense of the person who's nominally in charge, not having to bear all of this themselves. Mm-hmm. So teams figuring out how they want to do this as a team. I was talking with actually in the same organisation that this early career person I mentioned earlier was in. There was somebody else in her organisation I was talking with who said, I feel like I've got to figure out and take responsibility for the fact that one or two of members of the team have fallen away and not very connected. Of course, on the one hand, her instinct was absolutely right. On the other hand, they also had a responsibility for figuring that out and being connected and part of the team. And it was actually more a conversation they needed to have as a team about how they wanted to operate, and less I'm going to take this extra thing on my shoulders thing. And the thing that also goes with that is when we're and this has been true of teams that work geographically dispersed, teams that work in different locations for a long time. People have written articles about it, researched it. If we just go in as leaders and impose what we think the answer is, we can get things badly wrong. Let me give you two examples. One is we can actually unintentionally, my answer for this might be, perhaps because I think it is, or perhaps because it fits with my own personal preferences, is we'll schedule a team rah-rah session, for an hour a fortnight. Now that might be both the timing of that, the nature of that, and the reality of that for some team members might be absolutely hideous. Yeah. I'm not saying it's necessarily the wrong thing to do. What I am saying is the team as a whole needs to figure out, is this the right solution for us? Yeah. And what are going to be our routines for checking in with it? It's what principles are we going to adopt? If we've got people who are really struggling to just get their work done during the working day because they've got family or health things that they're having to deal with, we might need to find a way of checking in with them that is more offline, or is more thoughtful in terms of timing, or is more one-on-one. And having the conversation of kind of almost, say, figuring out, almost negotiating. This is how we need this to work between us, rather than assuming what the solution might be. I think is the thing that smarter leaders are doing.
You know what I would prefer? I think if I was in that situation, I would prefer to do it probably no different than I would have done it if I was face to face, i.e. I look in someone's diary when they've got free time, give them a 5-minute call. I think that's, unless, I don't think I would schedule it unless it was a formal meeting with an agenda and the stuff needed doing. But if it was a catch up, I think I would just say, hi, have you got 5 minutes? Because I just like to say hi. I think that would suit my style better. And it still feels like I'm personally invested in you.
Yeah, well, exactly. If you're the sort of leader or manager who ritual was management by walking around.
Yeah, that's me.
Have you got 5 minutes? While I'm with you, what about?
Yeah.
Then working out what the best the best alternative available in the current environment for that is going to be, while at the same time being sensitive to the fact that some of your colleagues may need something that's kind of a bit that is nuanced for their own circumstances. Absolutely, the smart thing to do. What is not acceptable is to do nothing. Yeah. What's also not acceptable is for a team member to suffer in silence, because there is an ask here for team members to take a bit of leadership around here as well. And to go, if I'm a member of this team, then I need the team to know what works for me, and not to be precious about it, but to be real about. Here's my situation. Let's not make that a barrier. I want to be connected with the team. Let's figure out how best to do this.
Yeah, because that's interesting, because pre-lockdown I was doing with a council, one of the large London councils, I was doing a high-performance team programme, funny enough. It was almost perfect for COVID, in the sense that we had changes the new normal, for example, was one of the modules before COVID. So just say, that's how it is, you've got to sort that out. And this particular council, they decided to send their teams home a week before the government sent everybody home. So we had an impromptu coaching session as a team to work through what would the rules of engagement be now they're remote. So it was really handy, because all those things came out when people were saying, actually, I'm going to have a child at home, I do not want to be bothered all the time, or I've got to this, can I work later, or can I work earlier to avoid this? And so it was really helpful. But I would have thought that good leadership would mean that you would check with each member of the team anyway. So I agree that the team should have a conversation, but surely a good leader would be doing that anyway.
Well, and I think that's where we have to be careful, because, I mean, by the way, what you described with that conversation is exactly the sort of conversations that I feel teams should be having.
Yeah.
I think what happened was good leaders were either leaning in a little bit harder to get the work done when all of this kicked off, or they were trying to lean in to check in. However, over time, some of those habits have fallen back a bit.
Yes, that makes sense.
People have gotten used to, we're just getting the stuff done. The stuff is getting done. And what every team needs to do, however good it is periodically, and what every team and what every team leader needs to do periodically is step back and go, okay, that was March. It's now December.
Does it still work for me?
is it still working for me? Is it still working for the members of the team? Is what we need to do and what we're about and the things that are being asked of us also different? And when we take all of that together, do we need to have another conversation, work it out, make sure that we haven't got into some bad habits in some places, and make sure where we've got some good things going on that we make full use of those.
That makes a lot of sense. I love the way that you're so reasoned in the things that you're saying. I like that. Go on.
Well, there's a kind of philosophy around teams here, and it's the reason why I talk about the work I do as being about coaching teams and leaders of teams, because the idea we kind of all go off on a away day and we do some fun stuff and that kind of fixes the team forever. It doesn't work for a million and one reasons.
Yeah, I hate those things.
Well, it can have short-term impact. Sometimes they can be fun. Sometimes they can be awful. It's much more like, if you want to get fit and stay fit, or you want to lose weight and stay losing weight, probably the worst thing to be saying a week before Christmas, then you don't do it by having a one-off blast at it.
No.
What you have to do is you have to keep coming back, keep assessing, where am I now? What's changed? What do I need to do next? Exactly the same with teams. If they're not taking stock, with the current rate of change, it's probably every 2 to 3 months, rather than in usual times, maybe more every 6 to 12 months, and going, how are we performing? How are we working together? Where have we got areas we can improve? Where are we playing to strengths and where are weak points? And what can we do about those?
Yeah.
And they're always going to be missing a trick.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that I think a lot of people and a lot of companies have kind of said, right, okay, 2020, we write that year off. That was rubbish. Right, we're gonna do it better now. And I wonder, in that sort of circumstance, we're a month away, less than a month away into the new year. So if I'm a manager or a leader in an organisation and I've got my dispersed teams and they'll be dispersed for quite a while longer, how do I make sure that I am now, bearing in mind March was a long time ago, actually getting it right? So is there like 5 things a leader should do to make their team work or something?
Well, I think there's probably 2 or 3 things that we could crack on with, almost as kind of, and I think of these kind of, it's like the Pirates Code, all right? It's kind of more like guidelines than kind of formal rules.
Yeah.
But as resolutions, paying attention to what the current state of connectedness in the team is. Because when we just pay attention to something, then and start to have conversations with other people in the team, then things will come up that we might otherwise have missed. So that's the first thing. It's very easy when we're very focused on getting things done, and sometimes just keeping our heads above water at the moment, to miss that attention. And it's that little bit of extra attention in this area that goes a long way. Recognizing, so the second thing I think would be to recognize that those chance moments that really help to build the fabric and magic of a great team aren't going to happen by chance in the way that they have historically. So what we have to do is be a bit intentional about bringing them about, and be a bit smart about doing that in a way that is not just imposed on the team, but actually brings in the ideas, the best of the thinking within all the members of the team. And we have to be intentional about it, because if somebody doesn't take some action, And if I'm a team member in a team where it's not happening at the level it needs to, I need to be saying that to my colleagues and to the head of my team. If we're not intentional about it, it's not just going to happen by chance. And then I think the third thing is to be a bit kind to ourselves as leaders of teams. Anybody who's got people working for them in the current climate and going next year has got a million and one things running, both personally, what's being asked of me work-wise, how does this fit in with the rest of my life, what's this saying about my career. They will have a sense of responsibility for all of the people who are reporting into them, all the people who are working with them in the teams in which they're a part, and not being afraid to go, I don't have to have all the answers, but what I do have to do is have all the is to ask the right questions of my colleagues so we can get it more right.
Makes sense.
Absolutely. And then tap into the resources and the different thinking, knowledge, and experience that all great teams have. And one of the great things about teams is they're not made up of kind of cloned individuals. They're not like Lego sets.
Some companies think so. I've certainly worked in companies before where they've tried very hard to have little army clones everywhere.
Yeah, but it's interesting. You talk about army clones. My experience is having met with and talked with people who've worked in those environments.
Yeah, they have a lot of free thinking time, don't
they? The last thing they want is for everybody to be like everybody else, because if they do that, it's discipline's one thing.
Yeah.
Homogeneity, just being everybody being clones of everybody else, and is the worst, breeds the worst sort of conformity, the worst sort of groupthink, and it doesn't access the range of abilities, experiences in the wider sense, life experience as well. That makes for great decision making.
No, I agree. I've had quite a few people from the various different services who strike back and saying that kind of military mindset of where you just follow orders kind of ceased to exist many decades ago, and they're a much more free thinking force, which is good to see. I've got one question actually before we end, or maybe two, which is you talked about paying attention and making sure that you check the current state of connectedness. How does the leader do that?
With a little bit of courage, but especially there will always be that one team member who you're a little bit hesitant to go and contact, either because you're really not sure what's going on or because you're a little bit fearful of the response. So I think that starts with what's my responsibility? And my responsibility is I have to have the conversations that I need to have to make sure that the members of the team are in the right place and feeling connected. Because if not, A, there could be something going on for them that actually I have a duty of care about. B, if I'm not doing that, then at least some of what they have to bring to the team becomes lost.
Yeah.
So I have to, the courage bit is, I can't not do it. What I can do is set it up in a way that is sensitive to who they are. That starts with Judith likes to be approached in this way, and we have a saying in the coaching world which is pace, lead. It's a bit like what the professional dancers do on Strictly, which is, if you watch them, is they're very good at making sure that they stay with the person they're partnering until the point where that person's able to absolutely fly.
Yeah,
it's that start on their ground, meet them on their in a way that's easy for them. and then bring them into the conversation that you need to have with them.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. I always talk about pacing, but I like the idea of pace lead. I might switch to start to say that instead. This has been a fab conversation. Is there anything I should have asked you that I forgot?
Oh, I'm sure there's loads of things. To me, the two really big things are teams find themselves in the situation they're in it through no fault of, or largely through no fault of the people who are leading those teams. So if you're listening to this and thinking, I'm in charge of a team, my God, I should have been doing this, that, and the other, and so be kind to yourself, because it's been tough for everybody, and been particularly tough for people who lead teams this year. So it's not you, it's just the situation.
Yeah, I like that.
And secondly, there are what I heard somebody describe recently as simple, difficult things that you can do about it. Setting up the conversation, because the whats are really simple. Mm-hmm. Setting up the conversations, ensuring the team is discussing how it's operating, talking to the team members who you are concerned about or who feel like they're not fully connected. Those are simple things to do. They're also complex things to do because they ask a lot of us individually to do well.
Yeah, that's true.
So dig deep, go and do those, because actually what you get back will be a support to you.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's true. I'm greatly pleased that you mentioned about the courage, because leadership is courageous, and you're just going to have to step into that, because that's what we all need from each other, isn't it? That courage.
Yeah, and what comes back, I think, when we show that with teams is the support of the team in return. Mm-hmm. And that, we started off with that word resilience. Actually, one of the things that makes any system resilient is lots of interconnections. So building more connectedness.
I like that. Great. So thank you for coming back, and we will be able to tempt you for a third time in a few months.
I look forward to that. Thank you. And I wish you and everybody the very, very happy and successful 2021. It's going to be different from 2020. We don't know quite how, but there's a whole load to learn, isn't there?
There is. Thank you so much. Thank you once again for tuning into the Maverick Paradox podcast. I hope you have enjoyed listening to my conversation with Patrick as much as I enjoyed having it. At the Maverick Paradox, we improve your impact and influence by enabling you to effectively strategize, innovate, and execute. To find out more, contact us at judith@maverickparadox.com. If you are pathologically curious and would love to find out more about the Maverick Paradox, then please subscribe to this podcast on one of the popular podcast platforms. Alternatively, you could explore our resources on Mavericks at maverickparadox.com, or read the Maverick Paradox magazine. We publish frequently each week. If you subscribe, you will get our monthly newsletter. And let's not forget my book, The Maverick Paradox, The Secret Power Behind Successful Leaders. For those that love a good discussion, you could apply to join our exclusive Facebook group. Finally, if you would like to work with us or are interested in the Maverick at work, check out maverickparadox.co.uk.